Don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to stay updated with our latest stories. The late afternoon sun was filtering through the lace curtains in my living room, casting intricate patterns on the worn Persian rug. I was curled up on my favorite armchair, a cup of lukewarm tea beside me, lost in the pages of a well-loved novel. It was a Tuesday, quiet and predictable, like most days since my husband, Richard, passed away almost 6 years ago. I was 60 now, and while the initial sharp edges of grief had softened, a quiet hum of loneliness often filled the spaces Richard used to occupy. My children were grown, off living their own busy lives, and my days revolved around my garden, my books, and the occasional visit from my grandkids. Then a gentle rap on the front door startled me. Not the insistent ring of the doorbell, but a polite, almost hesitant knock. I lowered my book, a flicker of curiosity stirring within me. Few people used the front door anymore, especially without calling first. I smoothed down my apron. I'd been baking earlier, and walked to the door, peering through the peephole. Standing on my porch was Walter, my next-door neighbor. He was a widower too, probably a few years older than me, with a quiet demeanor and a kind, if somewhat reserved, face. He'd moved in about 3 years ago, a few months after his wife passed, and our interactions had mostly been limited to waving across our lawns and exchanging pleasantries about the weather. He held a small, slightly overflowing plastic bag in his hand. Inside, I could see what looked like a tangle of old Christmas lights. When I opened the door, a faint flush rose on his cheeks. "Mrs. Hayes," he began, his voice a little gruff, but polite. "Eleanor, please." "It's Eleanor," I offered gently, a small smile touching my lips. He rarely used my first name. "Eleanor, then," he corrected himself, his own smile a shy, fleeting thing. "I apologize for disturbing you. I was wondering if you might be able to help me with something. A small favor, really." He gestured to the bag. "These old Christmas lights of mine. They're a mess, and I'm just not as nimble as I used to be trying to untangle them. My eyesight isn't what it was, either." He let out a small, self-deprecating chuckle. "My grandson usually helps, but he's away at college." I looked at the tangled mess in the bag. It did look like a formidable task. Richard had always been the one to handle our lights, and I usually just tossed them in a box, hoping they'd magically untangle themselves by next year. But there was something about Walter's hesitant request, his quiet vulnerability, that touched me. It wasn't a demanding request, but a genuine plea for help with a mundane, yet frustrating, chore. "Oh, Walter, of course," I said, stepping aside and opening the door wider. "Come on in. Let's see what we're up against, shall we? I've got nothing but time today." He hesitated for a moment, his gaze sweeping over my cozy living room, the bookshelves overflowing with books, the soft throws on the sofa, the subtle scent of lavender from the potpourri bowl. Then, with a nod of gratitude, he stepped inside. The afternoon sun, now a deeper gold, seemed to welcome him, wrapping the room in a gentle warmth. Walter set the bag of tangled lights down on my large coffee table, the plastic rustling softly. He seemed a little out of place in my overtly feminine, lived-in space, a stark contrast to his own neatly manicured but somewhat sterile home next door. He stood awkwardly for a moment, his hands in his pockets, as I peered into the bag. "Well, Walter," I said, picking up a section of the lights, a jumble of green wire and miniature bulbs, "this looks like a job for a seasoned untangler." Lucky for you, I've had years of practice with knitting yarn gone wild. I offered him a reassuring smile, trying to ease the subtle tension that seemed to cling to him. He offered a small, appreciative smile in return. I truly do appreciate this, Eleanor. It's been sitting in my garage since January. I just keep putting it off. Sit down, I urged, gesturing to the armchair opposite mine. No need to stand on ceremony. Can I get you a cup of tea? Or perhaps a coffee? He hesitated, then nodded. Tea would be very kind, thank you. As I went to the kitchen to put the kettle on, I found myself wondering about Walter. He seemed so reserved, so quiet. What was his life like, alone in that big house? Did he miss the bustle of a family, the easy companionship that Richard and I had shared for so many years? The kettle began to sing, a comforting sound in the quiet house. I brought 2 steaming mugs back to the living room and handed one to Walter. We settled into our respective armchairs, the coffee table between us, the tangled lights forming a silent, challenging centerpiece. The aroma of chamomile tea filled the air, mingling with the faint, sweet scent of the apple pie I'd baked earlier. So, Walter, I began, picking at a particularly stubborn knot, what kind of lights are these? Are they for outside or for a tree? He watched my hands for a moment, then looked up. Oh, they're for outside, around the porch railing. My wife, Martha, she always loved to decorate for the holidays. It felt important to keep up the tradition. His voice softened as he spoke his wife's name, a quiet reverence in his tone. That's a lovely tradition, I said gently, feeling a familiar pang of empathy. I understood that need to hold on to rituals, to keep a piece of them alive. Richard always strung the lights too. I think it was his favorite part of Christmas, making the house glow. We worked in comfortable silence for a few minutes, our fingers methodically picking at the knots. He occasionally offered a suggestion or a quiet observation about a particularly tight tangle. It was a shared task, a small, quiet collaboration. And as we worked, the initial stiffness between us began to subtly soften. You know, Eleanor, he said after a while, his voice a little less gruff now, your garden is just beautiful. I admire it every day. Your roses are spectacular. Oh, thank you, Walter, I replied, genuinely pleased. They're my passion, really. It's where I find my peace. We talked about gardening then, about soil types and pruning, about the joy of seeing something flourish under your care. He told me about his small vegetable patch and his struggles with keeping the deer out. I found myself laughing at his dry wit, a subtle humor I hadn't noticed in our brief driveway chats. He had a way of describing the deer's mischievousness that was genuinely amusing. As the afternoon light waned, turning the room a soft, dusky blue, we made significant progress. The pile of tangled lights had dwindled, replaced by several neat coils. My fingers were a little tired, but a sense of quiet accomplishment hummed between us. Well, I think that's most of them, I said, holding up a long, untangled string, a small triumph. Just a few more stubborn ones. He looked at the neatly coiled lights, a genuine smile spreading across his face, revealing faint lines around his eyes. Eleanor, this is truly remarkable. I can't thank you enough. You've saved me hours of frustration. Nonsense, Walter, I said, waving a hand. It was actually rather therapeutic, and it was nice to have the company. My gaze met his, and in his eyes I saw not just gratitude, but something else, a quiet appreciation, a nascent warmth. The simple favor had created a space for connection, a gentle bridge between 2 solitary lives. And as the evening deepened around us, I realized this mundane chore had led to something unexpectedly pleasant, something that felt quietly significant. The untangling of the Christmas lights, a task I might have groaned at on any other day, had somehow opened a quiet door. Walter, usually so reserved, had blossomed a little in the warmth of shared activity. A few days later, I was out in my garden, pruning my rose bushes, when he walked over, carrying a small, beautifully carved wooden bird. "Eleanor," he said, a shy smile on his face, "I made this for you. A small token of my appreciation for your help with the lights. I know you love birds in your garden." My heart swelled. It was exquisite, a delicate little robin, so intricately carved that its tiny feathers seemed to ripple. "Walter," I whispered, taking it from him, my fingers tracing the smooth wood, "this is absolutely beautiful. You're truly talented." A faint blush rose on his cheeks. "Just a hobby," he murmured, but his eyes glowed with quiet pride. "I spend a lot of time in my workshop. It's a good kind of solitary." "I can imagine," I said, remembering my own Richard's similar solace in his workshop. "Thank you, Walter. It means a lot." From then on, our interactions grew more frequent, more natural. He'd stop by when I was in the garden, and we'd chat about plants, about the changing seasons, about the various neighborhood happenings. He started bringing me freshly picked vegetables from his own garden, plump tomatoes, crisp lettuce, which I, in turn, would transform into salads or soups and invite him to share. Our teas on the porch became a regular occurrence, a quiet ritual that filled the twilight hours with comfortable conversation. We talked about our pasts, not just the loss of our spouses, but the lives we had built with them. He spoke of his career as a quiet, meticulous accountant and his wife Martha's love for painting vibrant landscapes. I shared stories of Richard, his boisterous laughter, his passion for fixing anything and everything, his unexpected tenderness. There was a shared understanding in these conversations, a gentle empathy that made the memories less painful and more like cherished gifts. We found common ground in the quiet corners of our lives, in the shared experience of navigating a world that had subtly shifted around us. One particularly chilly evening, as we sat on my porch, wrapped in blankets, sipping hot cider, the conversation took a turn. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of wood smoke from a distant fireplace. "You know, Eleanor," Walter began, his voice low, his gaze fixed on the darkening sky, "Martha and I, we used to love stargazing. She knew all the constellations. It's funny, the things you miss, the quiet rituals." "Richard and I used to do that too," I confessed, a soft ache in my chest. He'd point out Orion's belt and the Big Dipper. I always loved the feeling of being so small, yet so connected to something so vast. He turned to me, his eyes, usually so reserved, holding a new, gentle light in the dimness. "There's a clear spot down by the old creek bed," he said, almost hesitantly. "Barely any light pollution. I go there sometimes, just to look up. If you ever wanted to, join me, sometime." My heart fluttered. It was an invitation, quiet and unassuming, yet deeply personal. A step beyond the familiar comfort of our daily chats. It wasn't just about stargazing. It was about sharing a private, cherished experience, a glimpse into a solitary corner of his life. The subtle tension was back, a quiet hum of nervous anticipation, but it was a pleasant tension, charged with possibility. "I'd like that very much, Walter," I said softly, meeting his gaze. "I'd like that a lot." The thought of it, of standing under the vast, star-studded sky with him, felt both exhilarating and strangely right. A simple favor, indeed, had led to something quietly profound. The night we went stargazing was perfect. The air was crisp and clear, with no clouds to obscure the vast canvas above. Walter picked me up just as the last hints of twilight faded, the world around us settling into a deep indigo. He had packed a thermos of hot cocoa and a thick blanket, anticipating the chill. The drive to the creek bed was short, down a winding country road I hadn't traveled in years. When we arrived, the silence was profound, broken only by the gentle gurgle of the creek and the occasional rustle of leaves. He spread the blanket on a patch of soft grass, away from the sparse lights of the nearest farmhouse. As we lay down, side by side, looking up, the sheer enormity of the night sky took my breath away. Thousands upon thousands of stars blazed above us, a dazzling tapestry of light against the velvet black. The Milky Way was a hazy band, stretching across the sky like a celestial river. It was humbling, beautiful, and utterly mesmerizing. Walter, true to his word, began to point out constellations. His voice, usually so steady, held a soft reverence as he identified Orion, Ursa Major, Cassiopeia. He told me snippets of their mythological stories, his quiet enthusiasm captivating. I found myself listening intently, not just to the information, but to the gentle cadence of his voice, the way his arm occasionally brushed mine as he gestured upwards. I pointed out a particularly bright star. "Is that Sirius?" I asked, remembering something Richard had once told me. "Indeed it is, Eleanor," he replied, his voice warm. "The dog star, the brightest star in our night sky, besides the sun." He turned his head slightly, his gaze meeting mine in the dimness. "It's funny, isn't it? How these ancient lights connect us. To the past, to something bigger than ourselves." We lay there for a long time, sipping hot cocoa, sharing quiet observations, and simply basking in the silent grandeur of the cosmos. The cold air was refreshing, and the heavy blanket, our shared warmth beneath it, created a small, intimate cocoon against the vastness. It was a moment of profound peace, of shared wonder. At one point he shifted, turning more fully towards me. His hand, warm and calloused, gently reached for mine. His touch was hesitant yet firm. "Eleanor," he said, his voice barely a whisper, This is truly special. Thank you for coming with me." "Thank you for inviting me, Walter," I replied, my voice equally soft, my heart doing a gentle flutter. His hand, intertwined with mine, felt surprisingly right, a comforting presence in the immense silence of the night. It wasn't a grand declaration, but a quiet, deeply felt acknowledgement of the moment, of our growing connection. There was a subtle tension in the air, a silent question hanging between us. The intimacy of the setting, the shared vulnerability under the stars, had created a space for something more. I felt a gentle pull towards him, a warmth spreading through me that went beyond the hot cocoa. It was a feeling of profound connection, of two solitary souls finding an unexpected resonance. We didn't speak for a few more minutes, just held hands, gazing up at the stars. The silence was comfortable, filled with unspoken understanding. Then he turned his head again, his eyes searching mine in the dim starlight. His thumb gently stroked the back of my hand. "Eleanor," he whispered, his voice a little rough with emotion, I've grown very fond of you these past few months. More than just a neighbor." He paused, taking a breath. "I truly value our time together, our conversations, your presence in my life." My heart pounded. His honesty, his quiet sincerity moved me deeply. I looked into his eyes and saw a familiar tenderness there, a hopeful question. It was a revelation, not just for him, but for me. The quiet hum of loneliness that had filled my days had slowly, imperceptibly, begun to fade, replaced by the quiet anticipation of seeing Walter, of spending time with him. This gentle, unassuming man, who had simply asked for a favor with Christmas lights, had slowly, respectfully, walked his way into a quiet corner of my heart. "I feel the same, Walter," I confessed, my voice barely audible, but firm. "More than just a neighbor. I've grown very fond of you too." The words, once unspoken, now felt liberating, shimmering under the vast, indifferent beauty of the stars. The simple favor had led to an unforgettable moment, a profound rediscovery of connection, and the quiet, undeniable promise of something new. The drive back from the creek bed felt different. The darkness of the night was still profound, but the space inside the car felt lighter, filled with a quiet hum of possibility. Our hands, which had intertwined under the stars, now rested naturally on the console between us, occasionally brushing, sending small jolts of warmth through me. The silence was no longer expectant, but comfortable, filled with the echo of shared vulnerability and quiet affection. Over the next few weeks, our connection deepened, slowly, naturally, like the changing seasons. The small favors continued, but they were now imbued with a different meaning. He'd bring over a freshly baked apple pie, insisting I try it, something his late wife used to make. I'd ask for his opinion on a tricky garden project, knowing his meticulous eye would offer valuable insight. Our evening teas on my porch, or sometimes on his, became cherished rituals. We talked for hours about our lives, our children, our dreams for the future. The conversation flowed effortlessly, moving from lighthearted anecdotes to deeper reflections on life, loss, and the surprising resilience of the human heart. He showed me more of his woodworking. He was working on a small, exquisitely carved jewelry box for his granddaughter, and I watched him, mesmerized by his patient, precise movements. There was a profound beauty in his dedication to his craft, a quiet artistry that mirrored the thoughtfulness he brought to our budding relationship. I, in turn, showed him my watercolors, hesitant at first, but his genuine admiration encouraged me. He had a way of seeing the beauty in things, in people, that was truly special. One particularly sunny afternoon, as we were tending our separate gardens, separated by the low hedge, he straightened up, wiping his brow with the back of his hand. "Eleanor," he called over, his voice carrying clearly in the quiet air. "I was thinking. There's a classical concert in the park next Saturday. They're playing some Beethoven. Would you be interested in going with me?" My heart gave a little leap. It wasn't just a favor or a casual chat. It was a date, a real, proper date, and the thought of it filled me with a warmth that spread through my chest. Beethoven was one of my favorites, a composer whose music always stirred my soul. "I'd love to, Walter," I called back, a genuine smile blooming on my face. "I'd love that very much." The concert was beautiful. We sat on a blanket under a canopy of oak trees, the music soaring through the twilight air. He held my hand, gently, naturally, and I leaned my head against his shoulder as the symphony swelled. It felt profoundly right, being there with him, sharing that moment of beauty and quiet connection. As we walked back to his car, the moon high in the sky, he stopped me under a lamppost, its soft glow illuminating his face. His eyes, usually so guarded, were open, full of a gentle affection. "Eleanor," he said, his voice low, a soft tenderness in every word, "these past few months, you've brought so much light back into my life. I didn't realize how much I was missing, how much joy was still possible." He reached out, his hand gently cupping my cheek. I've fallen in love with you, Eleanor. Quietly, gently, but undeniably." My own eyes welled up, tears blurring the soft light of the lamppost. The journey from a tangled mess of Christmas lights to this confession under the moonlight had been slow, subtle, but deeply profound. I felt my own heart, which I thought had been carefully sealed off after Richard, unfurl its petals, open and vulnerable, yet remarkably resilient. "Oh, Walter, I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. "I've fallen in love with you too." He smiled, a beautiful, genuine smile that reached his eyes, and then, slowly, tenderly, he leaned in and kissed me. It was a soft, hesitant kiss, full of respect and deep affection, a silent promise of new beginnings. And in that moment, under the gentle glow of the lamppost, with the soft strains of music still echoing in the air, I knew that a simple favor from my neighbor had indeed led to an unforgettable moment, a profound rediscovery of love, and the quiet, undeniable promise of a future woven together, thread by beautiful thread.